Okay, so I decided to do my project on microevolution. It's a pretty simple idea and concept, but when you look into it and look into the depth of actually what's behind it, it's pretty complex, and I thought it'd be interesting to learn about. So I spent a while learning about it. Microevolution, obviously, the definition is a change of allele frequencies in a population over a short time. The basis for all large scale or macroevolution, which macroevolution basically is just the big version of micro. Obviously, it's like economics. It's the same thing. Like instead of personal or individual, it's the whole. And macroevolution is a completely different topic that relates to the evolution of large groups of individuals or animals, obviously, and other things like that. And like this says, to fully appreciate evolution, we need to look not just at the outcomes, but at the process that created those outcomes, and that's evolution. Because the whole idea with evolution is you look at where it came from and where it started and how it progressed and became to what it is today. It's just like showing how frogs have changed and how over time the trees divided in picture A, the image. It divided the trees and the color of the frogs went each way with it from A to B. Um, exactly how do populations evolve? There are many different alleles in a population, but a frog can only have two. And these two frogs have different alleles for coloration. And that's just basically saying that these chromosomes each represent the different colors, like the A1, A2, and the A2 and A4. The paternal and the maternal chromosomes change the color of the frog from the lighter color to the darker color. The 5 agents of change that can alter it are mutation, gene flow, genetic drift, non-random mating, and natural selection. Well, I'm gonna explain that. Mutation is just like genetic mutation. Like I don't know, something happens and like it loses a leg and it grows one back. That's kind of mutation. Or over time, an animal changed over millions of years from being like a bird. They become a fish. They grow gills so they can breathe underwater. That's a really drastic change, but gene flow, genetic drift, non-random mating. That's like basically what it says. It's not random. It's just happens naturally, and it's where I'm pretty. That's where it's just paired. Like when like farmers or somebody specific just puts two specific animals into one area, and that's non-random. And the natural selection, which is a big. Everybody knows what natural selection is. It's basically how nature decides who lives and survives. It's like if a bird gets pushed out of its nest and it can't fly, then that's natural selection. Mutation is any permanent alterations in the makeup of DNA. They must be heritable. A base pair, deletion, translocation, or etc. Most do nothing. A few are harmful, and rarely they are beneficial. These mutations are not working to further survival and reproduction, and these mutations are not likely to account for a change in the allele frequency. A big one is these mutations are not working for working to further survival and reproduction. Mutations usually they can be a good thing, and they're changing, like I said, to help evolve the animal and help the animal be able to survive a lot longer. But these mutations aren't good, and they're negative and can have bad consequences over time. Gene flow, a change in allele frequency that can occur when mating with members from another population occurs. It's the movement of genes from one population to another. Migration is the movement of individuals from one population to the territory of another. And plants migrate too, which I learned. Gene flow, the ranges like the bullocks and the Baltimore Orioles, the species overlap in a hybrid zone. And that's where the gene flow, like between the two, occurs, which is right here in like this kind of Midwest area. Because the Baltimore Oriole is more eastward and the bullocks is more out west. Migration, obviously just showing pictures like the monarch butterflies is a big one that everybody knows about. Whales and butterflies, birds especially flying down south. We live down south, we know how that works. Genetic drift, which is something new that I learned about and I didn't really know much about, is the chance alteration of allele frequencies in a population, with such alterations having greatest impact on small populations. The bottleneck effect, founder's effect, and then a small sample of alleles is likely to yield a gene pool that is different from the distribution found in larger population. There's a drastic change in this because it goes from the huge piece of ice to the little piece of ice, and all the penguins are just you can see what's going on in the survival of a large population. The bottleneck effect, this is pretty interesting. The change in allele frequency in a population due to chance following a sharp reduction in the population size, which how this explains it is like the one red penguin is like the outlier. In a group, it's more hidden and it's not as easy, but when there's only 10 or so, the one stands out and can fall off. Whereas if a population's larger and it loses 50%, it's not drastic, like it's still going to survive. But in a smaller population, you lose 50%, it's detrimental. And then founder effect, when a small portion of a population migrates to another area to start a new population. I don't know, the word founder helped me learn that there. It's something's founded and there's a founder and they start something new. This kind of explains the bottleneck a little bit more. How out of like the gene pool kind of, there's more to choose from in larger sample sizes. Like cheetah survived drastic bottleneck in the 19th century. Excuse me. This is an interesting fact about the founder. The Native American woman, like all Native Americans, is a descendant of people who crossed the Bering Strait into Alaska over 10,000 years ago. No Native Americans have type B blood, which, crazy fact, like all full-blood Native Americans, because apparently by chance none of the immigrants who had this blood type. So B blood type was the only blood type that came over, and if you're pure blood like Native American, you will have type B. Non-random mating in which a given member of a population is not equally likely to mate with any other given member. I mean, simple as it sounds, it's just natural selection in that aspect of it's not the same opportunity for each to mate. Sexual selection is a form of non-random mating. This is mating based on phenotype, based on choices made by the female of the species. The male will increase a proportion of his alleles in the next generation. That's just a perk for males. And like I think it's showing how like men are the male species grow horns and like I don't know, I can't think what those are called. Just spread their feathers out. Birds pop their chest. Natural selection is a process in which the differential adaptation of organisms to their environment selects those traits that will be passed on with greater frequency from one generation to the next. It's just traits of which are most successful in reproducing will be more widespread in the population. Just if it works, it's going to pass down, and the animals it's going to be passed down in their genes and their alleles and everything. Artificial selection. This is where humans come into play. We choose the traits that we prefer in animals or crops and whatever's desirable. Mainly, like the one I can think of is dogs. Whenever you go to either a pound or like a breeder, you're just gonna look at the dog and you're not gonna want the runt. You want the best, like the strongest, the most fit looking dog. And natural selection is only one of 5 agents of microevolution. That is the only one that consistently works to adapt organisms to their environment. Because genetic drift is random, mutation has a negative effect or no effect. Gene flow doesn't necessarily bring in genes that are better suited to the environment, and non-random mating doesn't have anything to do with matching individuals of the environment. This is just a little more descriptive of the natural selection aspect of it. And it operates on characters that are polygenic and continuously variable, and it can happen in 3 different ways. And stabilizing selection is one of them. Its intermediate forms are favored over extreme forms. It's just statistics showing like birth weight and things like that. Directional selection, when natural selection moves a character towards one of its extremes. That's where it's like natural selection is kind of taking a side, and like this smoothest of brachiopod shells took 10 million years to achieve, and that's just showing like how directional it's moving in one direction, but it takes a long time to get there. And then the last of natural selection is disruptive selection. It's when natural selection moves a character to both its extremes, where it kind of splits, and it doesn't occur that often. And that's my slideshow. I just wanted to say thank you, and like you said, if you want to use this video for any future classes, you are definitely allowed to. So, thank you, and I hope you enjoy.